Yo, what up, Street Talks there, Kim? All right, the thought. So this thought is about, some entrepreneurial tips or advice I wish I was given if I started photography all over again. So just some thoughts. The first is challenge all the different notions of success in photography and figure out like what do you really want out of it. So for example, my life goals in photography in the early days when I was like 18, 19, 20, 21. So it's like travel the world, get a solo exhibitions, publish books, become famous, make money from photography, blah blah. And once I achieved all those goals, it was actually quite anticlimactic. It was like it's like the story where Jay-Z is always like, the first day he bought a Rolls Royce and drove around the block, he was like, that's it. And so think about the end game and almost try to do a time traveling in the future. Assume that you had already achieved all of your life goals in photography. Then what? And why does it matter to you? Because this kind of Peter Thiel vibes or Rene Girard and the notion of mimesis or mimetic desires, like, to mime or to whatever. And so, for example, a lot of photographers, we just kind of mime each other and we think that the goal is to have a bunch of followers, get brand sponsorships, etc. But rarely do we actually try to truly look at ourselves in the face and look at ourselves in the mirror and it's like, do I really want these notions of success and why? And to think whether it's substantial or not. And so the notion of success in photography, I think, is actually quite overrated because, what does it even mean to be successful? As of now, I think the best way to think about success is longevity. And even to think that I'm still relevant to high schoolers and college kids right now, to me is a bigger sign of success than, money, followers, accolades, whatnot. And it does seem that the ultimate sign of success is robustness over time or even becoming better over time. So for example, think about like rappers who've been in the game the longest. Like, you got like Kanye, Jay-Z, Eminem, Snoop Dogg, etc. The fact that they've been able, even 2 Chainz, the fact that they've been able to stay so relevant for so long is probably the best sign of success than people who, are really, really hot for a year or two and then just kind of fade out. And so longevity seems to be a more interesting goal in photography than anything. And this is actually what I've seen a lot from like photographers and street photographers and people that I know is, they gauge too much of their own self-worth via other people, and therefore they soon lose motivation to keep shooting. And so even as a photographer, I feel like the best thing is to just endlessly be curious and endlessly be creative. And so for me, curiosity and creativity is probably the biggest things to judge our success as photographers. Also, like when it comes to self-branding or whatever, your first and last name is the most valuable thing, rather than like name yourself Mystic Images or Street Life Photos. Better to call yourself, your first and last name, right? Like Eric Kim or, even Samuel Street Life, at least he uses his first name. Or, like Kaiman Wang. Like it's so interesting. Even if you think about Digital Rev, obviously it's Kai, it's Alambi, and it's Locke. But Kai was really kind of the star of the show, right? It's kind of like even the Top Gear, right? It's really about Jeremy Clarkson. And so realize that the goal isn't to create a quote brand. Consider yourself, you're the rock star, you're the solo entrepreneur, and be very wary when it comes to collaboration, because collaboration is just kind of the thought of collaboration is good, but typically whenever you work with other people, things will progress a lot slower and maybe not necessarily at the pace you would like. And a lot of photographers or entrepreneurs or people who want to do stuff and make stuff, they always think that money, time, and resources is always the limitation. But in some ways, that limitation is good because, if you think about a quote-unquote creative constraint, a creative constraint is in which having fewer resources actually ends up being a benefit. So for example, even Airbnb, the way they're able to start is, they just literally made an air mattress and a bed and breakfast and just like a spare living room in their San Francisco apartment. And so it's precisely the lack of resources which made them so successful. Or even you think about like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak being in their parents' garage. So never think that money and resources is the lack. See that as a benefit and see how you could kind of milk that. Also, I think social media is the ultimate trap. Be aware. You remember back in the days, MySpace, Zanga, LiveJournal, whatever. And now, it's so funny. Even in such a short period of time, it looks like TikTok's starting to get more popular than Instagram. And so, Flickr. People don't really use Flickr anymore, right? So what's going to stay and have more longevity? It's probably going to be your own personal brand, your own blog. Bluehost.com, WordPress.org, self-hosted. YouTube looks like it's been having some pretty good staying power, but my simple formula is spend 90% of your efforts blogging and 10% on YouTube. That seems like a good formula. But even YouTube is always changing the algorithm, which means you have less control. And yeah, I really do think that what is really lacking in today's world in photographers is not really gear, equipment, and stuff like that. It's really I think it's like motivational ideas, education, philosophy, compositional ideas, aesthetics, and so forth. And so those seem to be pretty good gaps to fill and plug. And don't think of yourself as just a photographer. Think of yourself like a visual artist. It'll open up a lot of more opportunities. And and just ultimately just pay it forward. Financial independence isn't really the goal. To travel the world isn't really the goal. I think the goal is to be endlessly creative and always see the world anew as a child.